I still remember that sound very clearly. The sound of silence. Not the peaceful kind of silence like a quiet morning on the porch, but a deadly, suffocating silence, when an entire room full of people suddenly holds their breath all at once. It all happened in less than 5 seconds. I was standing in the middle of the Lone Star High stage, under the blinding lights of the biggest pep rally of the year. The music had started, my feet were moving, my body flowing with the rhythm. But then, the screen behind me lit up. I turned around, stunned, and then, my heart felt like it dropped straight to the floor. On the huge LED screen, dozens of private messages appeared clearly, letter by letter. I feel like I never belong here. They hate me. Lainey, I just want to disappear. My messages, sent to the only person I trusted. The crowd gasped, then laughed, then whistled. Someone shouted, "Poor little girl." I heard Bethany's laughter, whispered giggles behind me, then Lainey's eyes. Standing there, wide open, pale face, and not saying a word. I don't remember how I got off the stage. I only remember my legs shaking, my hands dropping the palms to the floor, and my dry throat unable to utter a single word. Everything before that day seemed like the beginning of a new journey, but it turned out to be the prelude to the hardest battle of my life. I'm Madison Grant, 17 years old, daughter of a former CL, a quiet, strict warrior who always protected me with his silent love. Before moving to Austin, Texas, my life was spent in small towns connected to military bases. No parties, no lifelong friends, just temporary places, faces I never had time to remember. We moved every few years, and my dad always said, "Maddie, life is like water. You have to learn to swim in every current, not fight against it." I thought I was used to being the new girl. But Lone Star High was unlike anywhere I'd ever been. It was a world full of unspoken rules, where appearances decided everything. Especially if you were a cheerleader. Joining the cheerleading squad was a dream, but I didn't expect it to be where invisible wounds began. At first, I thought the strangeness was just because I hadn't fit in yet. But the cold stares from Bethany, the captain, the elbow jabs, the vague sarcasm, soon made me realize I was not welcome here. Lainey was the only one who made me feel at ease. She was different, smiling at me, texting after practice, gently asking how I was. I thought I could trust her. My dad didn't talk much about the battlefield, but every night when I practiced dancing in the backyard, he'd sit on the porch quietly watching. Some nights when I felt discouraged, he just said one thing. "When you're not welcome, you don't need to find a way to be loved. You just need to remember who taught you to stand tall among wolves." I tried, really tried, ignoring the silent pushes, the hints, the times I was left out. I told myself I was strong, that I was a sales daughter. But then, that pep rally tore off the mask I wore on my face. It wasn't just coldness anymore. It was betrayal, public, cruel. I sat in the girls' bathroom, arms wrapped tight around my shoulders, while footsteps passed by in the hallway. My tears had dried up, but the shame still burned my chest like acid. I didn't know how I would return to school, or even if I wanted to come back at all. I only knew one thing. There was someone out there who didn't need explanations, didn't need reasons, who always stood by me. And my dad saw it all. After that pep rally, I stayed in my room for almost 3 days. Not because I was weak, but because I needed silence. Time to accept that the only person I trusted, Lanny, had betrayed me for some reason I hadn't dared to imagine. And above all, I had to face the feeling of being laughed at by an entire school. My dad didn't ask much. He just left a sandwich at my door every noon, and at night, he'd lightly knock 3 times on my door. A sign that he was there, that he wasn't going anywhere. On the 4th day, I opened the door myself. His eyes blinked gently. His mouth said nothing, but he pulled up a chair beside me, handed me a bottle of water, and said, "The most dangerous enemy is the one who hits the weakness you hide the best. But if you learn not to be ashamed of your pain, no one can use it against you anymore." At that moment, I wasn't strong enough to nod. But those words kept repeating in my mind like an inner training. I went back to school the following Monday. No one waited for me at the gate. No sympathetic eyes. Only quiet whispers fading away as I walked into the classroom, as if they had said too much about me all week. And now there was nothing left to say. I kept my head held high, but inside, I was a mess. I didn't know how to look at Laney. I didn't want my eyes to catch the satisfied glance from Bethany, the cheer captain, who I was sure had orchestrated everything. The classes passed like a fog. I couldn't remember what I learned, or who sat next to me. All I clearly felt was that I was like a black ink blot on a pure white page, and everyone was trying to avoid me. In the afternoon, I went to practice as usual. Not because I thought I was still accepted on the team, but because if I didn't show up, they had already won. Coach Riley glanced me up and down, her eyes unreadable. "You're 5 minutes late," she said curtly. "I'm sorry. I'll warm up right away," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. No one spoke to me. No one looked me in the eye. I practiced with the team, but like a shadow. Laney stood at the far corner of the formation, stealing a few glances at me, but avoiding my gaze. I didn't know what made her betray me. Pressure from the group, the desire to be accepted, or simply weakness. I wasn't ready to know. That night, when I got home, I found my dad sitting in the backyard, wiping down his old Jeep. I sat down beside him, saying nothing, just watching the brush sweep the dust in circles. "You went back to practice, huh?" I nodded. "So you didn't let them knock you down?" I sighed, staring up at the starry sky. "But I don't even know what I'm trying for anymore. I have no friends, no trust, no respect." My dad stopped, looked straight at me calmly. "Not every battle needs a companion. But if you know clearly why you stand, you can stand alone for a long time." I pondered that for many days after. I began observing everything again. As if this was a battlefield, I needed to know inside out. I learned to read the body language of the team members. Who went home with whom? Who talked behind whose back? I knew Bethany liked to control those who were weak and obedient. I was not one of them. I didn't play their games. I didn't fake smile. I didn't nod at their sarcasm. But I worked, passionately, steadfastly, and then, something strange happened. Coach Riley started to notice. One day after practice, she called me over. "You don't have to prove anything. But I see how you work, and I appreciate that." It wasn't a hug, nor a comforting word, but from someone like Coach Riley, those words were enough to make me feel not invisible. Just as I was starting to stand firm, a new challenge came. The regional cheer competition was 3 weeks away. The team was chosen to perform the main routine. Bethany was clearly going to lead. But at the team meeting, Coach Riley suddenly announced, "The lead routine will be performed by Madison." The room fell silent, as if all the air had been sucked out. I heard Bethany grind her teeth quietly. Lanny turned away. I didn't know what Coach intended, but I understood one thing: this wasn't just an opportunity. It was a test. A way for me to prove I wouldn't break from rejection. And I didn't need pity. I began practicing more, choreographing the solo myself, smoothing out every movement. My dad helped me analyze videos, giving feedback on every spin and jump. He wasn't a cheer coach, but he was an expert in discipline and perseverance. You don't have to stand out. Just be clear. Every move must mean something. Don't dance to show off. Dance to tell a story, he said. I still hadn't talked to Lainey. But one night, she sent me a message. "I'm sorry. They forced me to give up the chat. They threatened to release pictures if I didn't. I was wrong. So wrong, I don't know how to fix it." I read the message over and over. My feelings were mixed. Anger, sadness, and some relief. But I didn't reply. Not because I hated her, but because I wasn't ready. The regional competition approached, and the atmosphere in the team was tense like a tightrope. I stood in the formation, bright white lights shining into my eyes, sweat soaking my back. All eyes were on me. I closed my eyes, remembered every night of practice, every word my dad said, and every mocking laugh I swallowed. I opened my eyes, stepped forward, and began. Applause thundered as I finished the solo. Every spin, every jump, every forced smile was the culmination of all the times I was torn apart, patched up, and stitched back together on my own. But when I stepped down from the floor, I didn't feel victorious. Only my heart pounding fast and Bethany's angry eyes waiting for me backstage. "Don't think you're better than me just because you got favored," she said, her voice sharp like a knife. I didn't answer. I just looked at her long enough for her to know I was no longer afraid. In the days after the competition, things seemed to change, then didn't change at all. Coach Riley told me I had set a new standard for the team. Some classmates started talking to me more, not exactly friendly, but at least not avoiding me anymore. Some even hesitated to ask for photos with me after the cheer. But I knew all too well that spotlight was fragile. Because what I didn't know yet was that another storm was brewing. I began to hear rumors, whispers in the hallway, familiar wary glances starting to return. One afternoon after school, I received an anonymous message. "Want to know who really dragged you down? Ask your dad. Maybe not everyone's the hero you think they are." I was going to delete it, but my hand trembled. That night, I quietly dug through the military files my father kept locked in a box under his bed. I didn't expect to find anything. I just wanted to feel like I had checked. Like there were no secrets. But I found a disciplinary report, folded neatly, worn with age, but the words were still clear. Sergeant Grant suspended for disobeying orders during a special mission. Incident resulted in the death of a fellow soldier. I dropped the paper as if it were burning hot. My whole body turned to stone. My mind spun in chaos. My dad, the one who taught me to live with honor, with integrity, had broken protocol. And it had cost someone their life. I didn't sleep that night. I just stared at the ceiling, wide-eyed. The next morning, I skipped breakfast. I just stood in the kitchen, watching my dad sip his coffee, like nothing had happened. "You found it, didn't you?" he asked. No need for me to say anything. I nodded, my eyes still puffy and red. "Why, Dad? Why didn't you ever tell me?" "Because you didn't need to carry that pain," he said quietly. "Because I didn't want you to bear my wound like a weight on your own path." My voice cracked as I whispered, "But I did carry it, just in a different way. In your silence. That day at school. I was in the worst shape emotionally. Lenny saw me in the hallway. I couldn't tell if the look in her eyes was guilt, concern, or fear. But this time I stopped. "Did you know about my dad?" I asked directly. She bit her lip, then nodded. "Bethany, she's the one who spread it. She found the report on a military forum. Used it to threaten Coach Riley into demoting you." A chill ran down my spine. Why does she hate me that much? Lainey looked at the floor. Her voice was soft as a breeze. "Because you never bowed your head. You showed up and earned your place. Not through tricks or sweet talk, through hard work. And that scared her." I stood at a crossroads of emotion. I wanted to scream, to cry, to run away from all of it. But then I remembered something my father once told me. Words I had etched into my heart since the pep rally. "If you learn not to be ashamed of your pain, no one can use it against you." This time, I understood it deeper. Not just the pain of betrayal by friends, but the pain of having your own family's past thrown in your face. And I knew I would not let that pain control me again. A few days later, I requested a meeting with Coach Riley. "I know about my dad's file," I said straight out. "I'm not proud of it, but I won't hide it. And I don't want it used as a measure of who I am." Coach Riley didn't look surprised. She just nodded slowly. "I was Navy, Madison. I know what it means to carry missions no one else wants to talk about. Whatever your dad did, if he made a mistake, it's not your shadow to bear. I've seen how you respond. And that's what tells me who you really are." My eyes stung again, but this time, not from pain, from being truly seen. A week later, the administration summoned the cheer squad. Bethany was suspended from competition for 3 months. The evidence of her blackmail, spreading private information, and conspiring to circulate false rumors was undeniable. I didn't feel happy or vindicated. I just felt like the pieces were finally falling into place. Lainey also stepped down from the team. She said she needed time to rediscover herself. I didn't stop her. But when she handed me a small folded note, a final handwritten apology, I kept it as a marker. a sign that forgiveness was slowly taking root. I was no longer the outcast on the cheer team, but I wasn't trying to belong anymore either. I worked, I trained, I helped the new girls feel safe, and I understood. I didn't need to be liked to be respected. One afternoon, while I was practicing on the football field, my father walked up, holding a small box. "This belonged to an old friend from my unit," he said. "He was the one who didn't make it because of my decision." I opened the box. Inside was a letter and an old silver insignia. The letter read, "I don't blame Grant. If I had to choose again, I'd still want him to be the one to save me. The one who valued his teammate's life over his own reputation." I clutched the letter tightly. And I knew we all carry our scars, but it's how we keep walking that defines who we are. Though everything seemed to have calmed down, I would soon realize it was only the eye of the storm. The stillness before the hardest test yet. The days blurred into a cycle of intense practice for the state qualifiers. Lone Star High's cheer team was having its best season in nearly a decade, and Coach Riley was pushing us harder than ever before. But just when everything seemed to be falling into place, the past came roaring back, more explosive than ever. I knew something was wrong when my phone wouldn't stop buzzing on Saturday morning, just hours before our most important dress rehearsal. "Have you seen the news?" A message from Lainey, short and icy. I opened the article she linked. The headline blared across the screen. "Daughter of suspended former officer, linked to classified leak. Currently cheerleader at Lone Star High." They didn't name me directly, but every detail pointed squarely at me: the school's name, a description of my father, even an old photo of me in my cheer uniform, cropped from a social media post. It felt like someone had ripped away the mask I had carefully built. Like I'd been stripped bare, without a chance to defend myself. I showed up late to practice that day. Every eye turned toward me, not because I was the rising star anymore, but because I was now the center of a media storm. Coach Riley approached me. Her eyes weren't angry, but they were firm. "I need to know, did you, or anyone connected to you, leak anything to the press?" I shook my head, voice trembling with fury. "I don't even know what's going on. Someone's trying to destroy me and the team." She gave a slight nod, as if she had already suspected. "I believe you, but the administration might not." An emergency meeting was called that same afternoon. The school board decided to temporarily suspend me from the team until things were clarified. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. So all it takes is one anonymous article, and everything I've worked for means nothing? I asked bitterly. The principal replied, his voice full of regret. "It's not about you, Madison. It's about pressure. From parents, the media, and the school's reputation." I left in silence. No tears. No reaction. Just a numbness that ran deep. I wanted to disappear. I honestly thought about leaving Lone Star, going back to the base town, where everyone knew whose daughter I was, but no one cared who I was trying to become. But then, one afternoon, I received a message from the most unexpected person, Bethany. "I don't like you, but I don't want us to lose just because you got kicked off." Attached was an audio recording. A conversation between a Booster Club parent and a local journalist. In it, they discussed how to stir up some media heat, to pressure the school board by exploiting the not so clean past of Madison's family. They didn't care about me. They cared about seats, privileges, and prestige points. I forwarded the recording to Coach Riley. She stayed silent for a long while, then replied, "Now we have grounds to fight back, but I can't force you to return. This has to be your decision." I didn't need time to think. I'm coming back. Not to prove I'm innocent, but to prove I'm stronger than they ever imagined. On the day of the state qualifier, Lone Star High faced three of the toughest teams in Central Texas. I returned just in time, and the air was taut with tension. People whispered behind my back. Cameras pointed directly at me. Even some teammates who once stood beside me now glanced with wary eyes. But I didn't care. I clenched my wrists tight, remembering every rejection, every doubt, every betrayal. All of it boiled into a quiet strength pulsing inside me. We began our routine. Every movement was a declaration. I'm here. I didn't fall. I won't be defined by someone else's past. At the climax of our performance, I launched into an aerial twist, a move I had failed at countless times in practice. This time, I soared higher than ever before, and landed like the ground had always been waiting for me. The stadium erupted into thunderous applause, not because they knew who I was, but because they couldn't deny what they had just witnessed. We placed second, enough to qualify for the state finals. After the competition, Coach Riley hugged me, something she had never done before. "Madison, today you didn't just save this team, you saved yourself." I nodded, silent tears falling on her shoulder. That night, I posted a photo of our team on social media with the caption, "None of us are perfect, but when we choose to stand instead of run, that's when we truly shine." Elaney commented, "Proud of you." Even Bethany dropped a simple emoji. And to me, that was a silent surrender. Before bed, I sat by my nightstand and opened the old letter from my father's fallen comrade again. I looked at the worn silver badge inside, closing my fingers around it. My father once carried his pain like a shadow, but now I carry it as a light to guide my way. And I know the road ahead will be long, but I'm strong enough now to never back down again. Time waits for no one. From the qualifiers to the state championship, there are only 3 short weeks left. 3 weeks to heal fractured trust, recover from injury, and rebuild our foundation. But most importantly, 3 weeks for me to learn how to forgive. Not others, but myself. For the first time in my life, I asked Coach Riley to let me lead the practice session. "You're not the team captain," she reminded me. I nodded. "But I know I need to do this, for all of us." And she nodded back. That was a kind of trust I had never dared to dream of just a few months ago. I stood in front of the team, my voice trembling but firm. I know some of you doubted me. Some had good reason. Some didn't. But that doesn't matter anymore. Because when we step on that field, we are not individuals. We are one team. And I will fight for each and every one of you, the way I wish you had fought for me. No one said a word, But as I stepped out of the circle, I felt something shift. Their gazes softened. There was trust now, fragile, but real. Time passed quickly. The final days swept by like a whirlwind. Practices, team meetings, fine-tuning music and choreography. Every night, I came home exhausted, but driven. And then, the big day arrived. The state championship was held at a massive stadium in Houston. As the bus rolled out of the school parking lot, I looked out the window. Hundreds of students stood waving us off. In the crowd, I saw Lainey, Bethany, and my mom. She nodded at me, not with a beaming smile, but with the knowing look of someone who had fallen before and recognized her child rising. That stadium was a storm of emotions. Every team brought performances crafted with professional precision. When it was Lone Star's turn, my palms went cold. I closed my eyes and remembered my dad's words. Honor doesn't come from what others think of you. It comes from being able to look in the mirror and be proud that you did the right thing. I opened my eyes, nodded to the team, and stepped onto the floor. The performance began. I led the opening moves, each motion syncing with the beat, the cheers, the music. Everything unfolded perfectly, until a crack. I knew that sound. Lainey, who was supposed to anchor me for our triple stacked stunt, had twisted her wrist. The whole team froze for less than a second. But on a stage like this, 1 second could unravel everything. And then, the unthinkable happened. Bethany, the same girl who once hated my guts, stepped into the bass position without being asked. Our eyes met for a split second. "I got you," she whispered, "just fly." So I flew. Not because I trusted the hands beneath me, but because I trusted that we had truly become a team. I landed. Solid. The team carried on flawlessly. We ended the routine to thunderous applause. As we left the mat, Bethany gave me a light shoulder tap. "Consider us even." I smiled. Not a triumphant grin, but the kind of smile that comes when you realize you're no longer fighting alone. Later that day, the results were announced. Lone Star High won first place in the entire state, the school's first championship in nearly 20 years. We all burst into tears and hugs. Coach Riley took the stage to accept the trophy, but then handed the microphone to me. I stood there, spotlight shining down, cheers echoing around me. And I spoke, briefly. I used to think I didn't belong here, that my past was a weight I could never escape. But today, I didn't just find a team or a stage. I found myself. And I learned this honor doesn't mean being unscarred. It means having the courage to face those scars. On the bus ride home, I checked my phone and found a message from an unknown number. "You fought better than I ever did. I'm proud of you." I held the phone tight. I didn't need to know for sure if it was my dad. That one line was enough to close the chapter. That night, I stood in front of my mirror, still in my cheer uniform. For the first time, I didn't see the CL's daughter or the girl whose past got exposed. I saw someone real, strong, and no longer running. I whispered to myself, "My name is Madison Grant, and I belong here, not because of my past, but because of who I've chosen to become." Time waits for no one. From the regional qualifiers to the state finals, we had only 3 short weeks. 3 weeks to heal the cracks, recover from injuries, and rebuild trust. That was the true test of my strength. Even after our glorious win, life didn't magically get easier. In truth, everything felt like it was only just beginning. I started to realize that winning wasn't the end. It was the beginning of an entirely new journey, one that would require me to face deeper challenges, especially within myself. Soon, our practices returned to normal. But now, I wasn't alone anymore. The team had grown stronger than ever, and that bond was my new source of resilience through the tough days. Still, along with the joy came moments of reflection and doubt. Am I truly worthy of what I've achieved? Can I hold on to everything I've just built? Those questions weren't easy to answer. But I came to understand that they were an essential part of growing up. I needed to learn how to trust myself. Not just on the good days, but especially during the difficult ones. During that time, I also began to rebuild my relationship with my mom. We had deeper, more honest conversations, and began to understand each other in ways we hadn't before. She was no longer just the strict parent I'd once resented. She became an ally, a companion on the road ahead. And that gave me a new kind of strength. I also realized that forgiveness and compassion aren't just for others. They're for ourselves, too. I learned how to let go of the painful past, to release the weight of my mistakes, and to begin writing a new story, one filled with hope. That was when I truly recognized the importance of staying true to my values. No matter what I had gone through, I never gave up on my dreams and aspirations. My story wasn't just about a victory on the stage. It was about the journey to becoming the best version of myself. A journey that never really ends. And looking back, I know that every step, no matter how hard, was a necessary piece of who I am today.